The one thing Irish people take very seriously is our sense of humour. So you can almost get away with anything with Irish people if you can make it funny. It's very, very important to us that we have our sense of humour. The one thing that we will usually lose our sense of humour over it is if you call us British. Call us British and that's game over really. But anything else we can have a laugh.
압도적 경제 콘텐츠 삼프로TV의 악권. 안녕하세요. 권선우 취재팀장이고요.
네, 안녕하세요. 취재팀 막내 기자 한지연입니다.
예, 한지연 기자하고 저는 처음으로
처음으로
해보는 것 같습니다. 요즘에 저희가 특별히 기획하고 있는 게 있죠. 그 다양한 나라의 이야기가 궁금하다면 그 나라 제일 잘하는 분에게 물어보죠.
네, 그렇죠. 그래서 저희가 대사님을 섭외했죠.
네, 대사님을 섭외해서 좀 시리즈로 인터뷰를 진행을 하고 있는데요. 오늘 준비한 나라는 어디죠?
오늘 준비한 나라는 아일랜드 대사관.
아일랜드.
네.
아일랜드 하면 어떤 게 떠오르세요?
전 사실 기네스 맥주가.
기네스 맥주.
네, 저희가 흔히 볼 수 있는 거니까요.
예. 그리고 이제 그 아일랜드를 그 유럽의 한국이라고도 하고, 한국을 아시아의 아일랜드라고 하고, 맥주를 그렇게 먹는다고 그런 얘기들을 합니다. 그래서 오늘은 아일랜드에 대한 다양한 이야기를 해주실 주한 아일랜드 대사관의 미셸 윈트롭 대사님을 모셨습니다. 안녕하세요.
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 반갑습니다.
아유, 여기까지 와주셔서 감사합니다. 일단 아일랜드에 대해서 개괄적으로 그 뭐 인구라든지 국토 면적 그리고 아니면 주요 산업 그런 아일랜드가 어떤 국가인지에 대한 소개 좀 부탁드릴게요.
So, nice to meet you. Ireland is an island probably a little bit smaller than Korea, about 85,000 square kilometres, off the west coast of continental Europe, just to the west of the UK. We're the furthest west you can go in Europe before you hit America, shall we say. Our island is divided into 6 counties in the north, which are part of the UK, and 26 counties in the south, which is the Republic of Ireland. And that the Republic has been in existence for a little over 100 years. We celebrated 100 years since the foundation of the state recently. Even though we were occupied by the UK for a very long time, we have a very strong cultural heritage, very long and proud history, music, literature, film, and of course everybody knows us for St. Patrick's Day. And I think, you know, we share a lot in common with Korea. Some of the bad stuff, you know, a divided land, to be honest. We have a history of hunger, we have a history of conflict, but we also have very globalized economies. We have a very strong diaspora, people of our descent living in other countries. And really, you know, many people make comparisons because we've had 2 very successful economies. The Irish economy is doing really well at the moment, and indeed so is the Korean one. So hopefully we can share some lessons from our experience and indeed Korea's experience.
네. 그 앞서 성 패트릭스 데이에서 잠깐 언급을 해주셨는데 그거 말고도 여러 축제도 있고 또 음식이나 스포츠도 굉장히 좀 유명하다고 알고 있어요. 그래서 조금만 문화적 특징을 조금 더 설명해 주셨으면 합니다.
Sure. So yes, St. Patrick's Day is often when people want to come to Ireland. But you know, every month of the year there's a different festival. There's some other exciting reason to come to Ireland. At the moment we have a traditional Irish music festival called the Fleadh Cheoil, and we even have Korean musicians who come and play at that. We've an annual horse show in Dublin. We have a jazz festival in Cork. We have arts festivals in Galway and Kilkenny. There's even a festival in September in County Clare where you can, it's a matchmaking festival, and you can actually find yourself a husband or a wife. So, you know, lots to do. But also, you know, outside of festivals, lots of people come to Ireland to play golf. We have some really fantastic golf courses. People come to surf, great surfing beaches as well. And we also have our own code of sports. We have two sports, Gaelic football and hurling, only played in Ireland, but we actually have teams in Korea playing too. And so you can go and see some really fantastic hurling or Gaelic football, and then you can come back to Korea and play it. So lots and lots to do actually. It's a very exciting place, and of course it's small, so it's easy to get around as well.
좀 전에 그 이상적인 남편과 아내 찾기를 국가적인 행사로 한다는 게 굉장히
저 너무 가고
인상적이.
싶어요.
이게 그 아일랜드가 그 부부 관계가 굉장히 돈독하다고 한번 결혼하면 뭐 이혼을 못 한다.
네,
그런 얘기들도 좀 들었는데 그 아까 이상적인 남편 아내를 이상적인 남편이어야 갈 수 있는 건지 아니면 가서 남편이 될 수 있는 건지 혹은 진짜 그 이 아일랜드는 부부관계가 그렇게 돈독해서 이혼을 못한다는 속설은 사실인지 그것도 한번 대사님께 좀 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
So you don't have to be ideal at all. You can go and the festival is called Listún Varna. There's a very famous song about it too. And many years ago it was a place where often older male farmers would go to find a wife who would help them on the farm. But, Irish society has changed a lot. The festival is still there. And you could go and consult with an older matchmaker and they will identify an appropriate partner for you. So it is a lot of fun. But more seriously, many years ago we did have a ban on divorce in Ireland, but that has changed. And really, the population has... The laws are much more open. Anyone can get married or divorced, and really we're much more secular than we were as a society. A significant proportion of people consider themselves having no religion. 20% of the population of Ireland was born outside of the state, and even I think at the last count there were 69% of people said they were Catholic, but mostly are not practicing Catholic. They just identify as Catholic. So our social laws and rules have loosened up a lot since those days. But you can still go to the festival and find a husband or wife, so that's good.
그러면은 이 아일랜드 종교 방금 말씀해 주셨는데 좀 자세하게 어떤 종교가 있고 그다음에 인종이나 인구 밀도에 대해서도 조금 설명을 해 주세요.
So we, as I said, 20% of the population are born outside of the state, which means that we have a much more diverse population than we would have even 20 years ago, even when I was growing up. We are more diverse in terms of race, we are more diverse in terms of religious affiliation and culture. There's more diversity in culture. But we also have a very young population. So 50% of the population of Ireland is under the age of 34. And the population is, I think we're the third fastest growing population in the EU. So it's changing very quickly. The most important thing, of course, is that we make sure that that population, as diverse as it is skilled and equipped with the right education to be successful, right? But it's definitely had those changes over the last 20 years have had a huge impact on our society and on our politics, on our institutions, on how we work and so on. It's great.
와, 이게 고학력에 젊고 인구도 늘어나고 노래도 좋아하고 술도 좋아하고 축제도 많고 굉장히 지금 아일랜드 얘기를 들어보면 굉장히 흥미로운 나라라는 느낌이 좀 드는데 또 의외로 또 한국하고의 공통점이라고 한다면은 아픈 역사가 많다고 하더라고요. 그리고 아일랜드 하면 떠오르는 약간의 아픈 역사들에 대한 기억들이 있을 건데 대사님, 그 아일랜드 사람들이 기억하는 역사에서 조금 이렇게 아픈 기억들은 좀 어떤 내용들이 좀 있을까요?
Sure. I mean, there's lots. Could talk about this all day, but maybe two things I would highlight. So in the 19th century, mid-19th century, we had a very large famine, potato famine. And, it had such a profound impact on us. 1 million people died and 1 million people emigrated to mostly the US and the UK. And you can still see evidence of the famine in our landscape, in our culture, in our art today. It really did have a huge impact on us. But what that did to us today, I think, probably two things. It has meant that for Irish people and for the Irish government, our food industry and our agriculture sector have a really high priority. So we have invested in it. We have made it our priority to be best in class as a food producer. And now we are a major food exporter of meat, of dairy, of beverages, as you mentioned. So we're very proud of our food industry and we take it very seriously. Will always be a priority. But the other impact of that is that Irish people have a very high awareness of global hunger. And I know that that's something that Korea and Ireland have worked very closely on together. We have a very high rate of private contributions to humanitarian agencies. A lot of people will write to local politicians if they feel the Irish government is not responding to a famine in a particular part of the world and so on. So very high awareness of the existence of hunger today in our world. The other aspect of Irish history that's really interesting, because there are a lot of parallels also with Korea, is that our independence movement back 100 years ago, when we were regaining our independence from Britain, was very much influenced by culture and literature, particularly literature and theatre as well. And that revival in our culture was part of our self-expression, and it was part of our building our own confidence to say, well, we can do this, we can be an independent country. And I'm always very conscious that is exactly what happened in Korea as you were becoming independent from Japan, that there was a sort of blossoming of literature and theatre and song that helped Korean people say, you know what, we can do this, we can be free, we can be independent. So many scholars I know study those two cultural revival movements between Ireland and Korea and understand the similarities. It's interesting.
와, 그 기근으로 사람이 100만 명이 죽었던 아픈 기억을 배경으로 해서 거기에 식품 산업을 발전시켰다는 거는, 그리고 이제 또 이제 기아로 힘들어하는 아이들을 도와준다는 건 정말 아픔에서 뭔가 발전적인 해결책을 좀 찾으실 것 같은데, 사실 식품 산업이 발전을 했다고 말씀을 하셨는데 제가 잘 몰라서 그런지 몰라도 아일랜드 음식하면은 저는 피쉬앤칩스밖에 안 떠오르거든요. 혹시 아일랜드에서 좀 맛있는 음식이라든지 뭐 이런 것들은 좀 어떤 게 있어요?
I think you'll find fish and chips is kind of a British thing, actually. So, no, I mean, look, what we do produce in Ireland very, very well is grass, actually. We grow a lot of grass because it rains a lot. And so as a result, we have very, very high quality meat and dairy. So fabulous beef, fabulous sheep meat, lamb, pork. And of course, great dairy. One of the biggest products we export is butter, for example, all around the world. So those are our real stars. You know, as a cuisine, we don't have as typical a cuisine as Korea. It's really all about the ingredients in Ireland and finding ways to showcase the best of beef, the best of dairy, the best vegetables, the best fruits. So it's you've got to come and eat it to experience it, I think.
그러니까 이게 음식 맛이 없는 피쉬앤칩스는 영국 거다.
네, 아일랜드는 거의 약간 웰빙과 뭐 약간 건강식을 좋은 재료를 사용해가지고 하는 게 많은 것 같아요. 그럼 이제 이 기후랑 음식이랑 굉장히 관련이 많은 것 같은데, 이 한국이랑 또 공통점이 있더라고요. 이 사계절이 있다는 점이랑 저희가 사진 찍을 때 이 V 포즈를 많이 하잖아요. 근데 이게 이 반대로 손등이 보이면은 욕설이라는
그런 대사님하고 사진 찍을 때 이렇게 하면 안 되는 거예요?
아니, 이거 반대로.
이렇게?
네. 그렇게 대놓고 하시면 안 되죠.
그러니까 아일랜드 사람 만났을 때
조심해야 돼요.
게 있나 보네요.
The finger gesture thing, it is a bit rude, but the one thing Irish people take very seriously is our sense of humor. So you can almost get away with anything with Irish people if you can make it funny. It's very, very important to us that we have our sense of humor. The one thing that we will usually lose our sense of humor over it is if you call us British. Call us British and that's game over really. But anything else we can have a laugh. With regards to the weather, you say there are 4 seasons in 1 year. In Ireland, we usually say there are 4 seasons in 1 day.
1 day?
Yeah. Often you can start the day and it's beautiful sunshine and then it gets a little cold and then it's raining and by evening time it's snowing. So if you come to Ireland, you have to be prepared for everything. You have to pack your rain jacket, you have to pack your sun cream, you have to pack everything. Umbrellas are useless. In Korea, I see when it rains, everybody uses an umbrella, but because it's so windy in Ireland, I mean, you're wasting your time with umbrellas. You better just have a good rain jacket and you can do anything.
근데 사실 저희 나라도 요즘 날씨 보면은 하루에 4계절 거의 다 들어가 있지 않나요?
그래요.
네.
땡볕하다 비 오다가
네.
춥다가 뭐 그런.
오늘만 해도 좀 다양하게.
근데 여기는 원래 그런 거고 우리는 기후이기 때문에 그런 거.
그렇죠, 그렇죠.
그런 생각도 좀 드네요.
네.
그리고 사실 아일랜드 하면은 딱 떠오르는 게 사실 과거에 그 기근 생각하면 되게 가난한 나라라는 인식이 있고 또 몇 년 전부터인가 또 굉장히 잘 사는 나라가 됐다라는 얘기도 들리고. 그래서 이게 정말 그 가난한 나라에서 세계 2위 수준의 부자가 되고 그리고 그거게 어떻게 그렇게 순식간에 부자가 되냐라고 했을 때 좀 법인세 인하로 인한 조세피난 효과가 있지 않았느냐 뭐 이런 식의 분석들이 있는데 실제로 좀 아일랜드의 경제 성장은 어떤 과정을 통해서 일어났나요?
So, it is a good question. You could probably start the story in about 1973, which was when we joined the European Union 50 years ago. We're still celebrating. 50 years ago, our society was with very little industry. We were very agrarian. We had high inflation. We had high unemployment. There wasn't much tax revenue to invest in infrastructure and services. And so it was on a very, very high emigration rate. A lot of people moving, particularly UK and US, for work. So you could say that there were a number of factors that contributed to making our situation better. The first thing was that we had a couple of mostly US companies invest in Ireland in the ICT sector and in the pharmaceutical sector in particular. And they created enough of a foundation for us to invest in skills, attract jobs, invest in some secondary industries that would service those companies, and importantly, invest in our higher education system in relevant degrees, relevant qualifications. So that helped to create this virtuous circle. The critical mass of people and industries and infrastructure started to then attract additional investment, and you started to have the right enabling environment, the right standards, the right skill set, that made it an even more attractive proposition. And that then started to spread into other sectors, into other industries. We crucially invested a lot in our higher education institutions and in our research and development capabilities. So we're very proud now that we've gone from not being very strong at all in STEM to having a really strong track record in research and innovation. Crucially then, our membership of the European single market had a huge impact. So we went from being an economy with 5 million people to having access to 500 million people, a market. Well, at the time it was a bit less, but now it's 500 million people. There was a long period of economic stability, and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and a period where globalization was improving. So that really helped as well. And of course, then we brought in the euro as our currency. When the euro was introduced, that helped again with even further stability. I get asked a lot about the corporate tax rate, and we had for many years a favourable corporate taxation regime, but really what we hear from foreign companies that have invested in Ireland is that the corporate taxation is a helpful additional benefit. It's not the reason they come to Ireland. It's not the reason they stay in Ireland. They stay in Ireland, they come to Ireland and they stay in Ireland because of all of the other factors and advantages. And really, you know, the decision to come and invest in a country, invest in infrastructure, invest in workforce, is bigger than any single taxation rate. Some of these are highly sophisticated companies, and a couple of percentage here and there is not going to be the driver that's going to make those big decisions for them. That's what we hear, so that's what we believe. And anyway, our corporate taxation rate has increased slightly, so we're now at a minimum rate of 12.5%, which I think is probably closer to many of our other competitor countries.
아, 이게 답변 듣고 나니까 자꾸 제가 뭘 너무 단편적으로만 알고 있고 너무 이게 좀 오해를 하고 있구나 하는 생각도 들고, 그래서 뭐 저희가 또 대사님 모셔가지고 좀 들어보는 게 아닌가 싶네요.
저는 사실 이 부자 나라인 것도 부럽지만은 그 지난해 여자 혼자 여행해도 되는 나라 1위로 꼽혔대요.
1위?
네. 근데 사실 요즘 저희 나라 굉장히
그치. 우리나라도 사실 치안 좋은 나라였는데
네, 였는데
요즘 사회 분위기가 좀 그렇지 않죠.
네, 그래서 저는 이런 환경이 형성될 수 있었던 배경이 굉장히 궁금하기도 하고 어떻게 이렇게 평화롭고 안전한 나라가 됐는지 굉장히 궁금해요. 여기에 대해서도 좀 설명 부탁드릴게요.
You know, I would say the first thing I would say is that you can never be complacent. So yes, we are a very safe country, we are a very peaceful country, but you have to work at that. You have to pay attention to it. And particularly one thing I think we have done successfully in Ireland has been to invest quite a lot in our youth services. So making sure that troubled young people who might have difficulties can be supported and can be engaged in community activities and sport and arts and so on. At the moment, we have a very strong community ethos in Ireland, and I think there's a very that acts as a disincentive for people to perpetrate violent crime. The fear, a little bit like Korea, the fear of being judged by your community, the fear of being condemned by your community is quite strong. I think we also, because of our history, we have quite a unique policing model. So the model in Ireland is policing by consent. Our police force are called the Guardians of the Peace in Irish, An Garda Síochána, and they are unarmed. And they have a very strong emphasis on dialogue with communities, dialogue with people, actually collaborating with people rather than imposing law and order on them. So I think those factors combined do lead to a degree of safety and peacefulness. But like I say, you have to continue to watch it. You have to continue to invest, because all it takes is a minimum number of young people who have difficulties in their lives, and suddenly you have violent crime. And I think we're sort of seeing that a little bit in Korea now.
참, 그 공동체라는 단어 자체가 우리 사회에선 조금 잊혀진 그런 단어인 것 같아요. 사실 아까 뭐 가디언스 오브 피스 같이 이렇게 무장을 하지 않은 경찰 말도 안 들을 것 같은데 뭐 그런 부분들은 좀 우리도 좀 아쉽긴 한 그런 부분인 것 같아요. 그런데 사실 그 1인당 GDP로 따지게 되면은 그 룩셈부르크라든지 싱가포르 같은 도시 국가를 제외하고 나면 아일랜드가 1인당 GDP는 제일 높잖아요. 근데 사실 1인당 GDP가 제일 나쁜 나라임에도 불구하고 우리가 좀 아일랜드는 주력 산업이 어떤 부분인가, 전체 경제에서 어떤 산업들이 주요하게 좀 영향을 미치는지 그런 부분들을 좀 저희 잘 모르는 것 같은데 대단히 그거 관련해서 좀 설명 좀 부탁드릴게요.
So we have been very successful in the industries where I suppose the initiative started with foreign investment, but we have grown our own domestic industries. So they are ICT, either services or goods, pharmaceuticals, medical technology, aviation services is an important part of our work, organic chemicals. Those are major. And of course, our priority in Ireland is to remain competitive in those sectors. They will continue to be a huge employer and a huge priority. And as you know, those sectors are all evolving really quickly. So we have to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. And then the other industry, perhaps, you mentioned the city-states and maybe where we have a difference is in our food sector. So our agribusiness is really, really important. That industry has been successful partly because we have rain and we have beautiful land and so on. But also the government has invested very heavily in the system of organisations and supports that underpin our agriculture sector. So research and extension, farm financing, agricultural machinery, and indeed now, of course, farm safety, of course, food safety. But now, of course, the big challenge is climate change. And so we're investing heavily in making sure our food industry can be future compliant in the light of climate change.
근데 사실 이렇게 말씀하신 뭐 농업이나 항공 서비스 이런 게 다 사람이 필요한 일이잖아요.
그렇죠.
근데 몇 년 전부터 저희 코로나 문제가 굉장히 심각하게 이렇게 있었는데 이런 아일랜드에서 좀 영향이 그때 당시에는 어땠는지 그리고 관광 산업도 많이 지금 회복된 상태인지 궁금합니다.
So I would say, first of all, that maybe we were a little different to other countries in that our economic performance during the pandemic was quite strong.
Yeah.
We saw a big boost, of course, in pharmaceuticals, in life sciences, in medical technology. They all contributed enormously to a bit of an economic bounce. We were very successful in raising tax revenue during the pandemic, which meant that we were able to provide fiscal supports to households that were not able to work. Let's say small businesses that had to close because of lockdowns and so on. So we actually did okay during the pandemic. It was not such an economic disaster for us as it was for many of our counterparts. Now, as we rebuild, the tourism industry was the hardest hit, of course, and the tourism industry is one sector that we are nurturing back into life, you could say, a little bit. Again, during the pandemic, we did okay with domestic tourism. Irish people do like to go on holidays in Ireland quite a lot, and I expect that will continue. You know, we've had these massive heat waves across continental Europe this summer, and I imagine a lot of Irish people were might make the decision to stay home next year because we're not used to hot weather. It's not really our thing. In the international tourism sector, you know, before the pandemic, we had about 11 million international tourists each year. I think we were about 7 million last year. So we're hoping to get back to get the numbers back to what they were before the pandemic. The problem we have is that profitability is a real challenge. The war on Ukraine has driven, of course, inflation, has driven wage inflation, importantly, and combine that with the impact of the pandemic, where a lot of skills shifted into different sectors and so on. So the small and medium enterprises that are effectively the Irish tourism industry are having a hard time getting the right talent, keeping the right talent, paying the right talent. What that means for us is that we have to really invest in driving up the profitability as well as the numbers. And some of that means perhaps slightly higher end tourism. We would like, for example, to attract more golf tourism to Ireland because typically those are the types of tourists that spend a lot of money and help those small businesses survive these difficult times.
와, 근데 아까 설명 들어보니까 이게 바다가 보이는 골프장 있다 그래서 저는 골프를 안 친 지가 굉장히 오래됐는데 그래도 한번 가보고 싶다는 생각이 좀 들긴 합니다. 근데 사실 그 아일랜드의 어떤 산업이 생각보다 되게 다양하다는 생각이 좀 들었는데 이게 좀 주로 아일랜드는 어느 지역이나 어느 국가하고 이렇게 교류를 많이 하고 그렇게 그런 국가들하고 좀 긴밀한 관계를 맺게 된 어떤 역사적 배경 같은 게 좀 있을까요?
So, like I said, our membership of the European Union is 50 years today, or this year. We're very excited about that. The EU as a bloc, the single market, is our number one trading partner. And that is a really, really strong and a really important set of relationships for Ireland. Our second most important trading partner is the United States. Historically, that would have been based on economic ties with our diaspora and, of course, the major Irish cities of the US, New York and Boston and Chicago and San Francisco. But that's changing now, and that's becoming much more, those relationships are much more based on comparative advantage and skills and competition rather than our ancient Irish relationships with the US. Our third most important partner is the UK, and it is important, I think, to mention the impact that Brexit is having on our trading relationships. It has made life very, very complicated for Irish companies trying to trade with the UK, because now that means they're in a different regime. So we have some challenges on our hands to navigate that. I think that the turbulence that has come from the UK leaving the European Union has reminded us that it's really important to invest in other trading relationships. And so as a result, the Irish government is really investing in particularly the Indo-Pacific region, and Korea would be a very, very high priority within that. We need to remain competitive. We need to diversify those trading partnerships, and we need to establish really strong long-term trading partnerships for the future.
이렇게 다양한 나라랑 교육도 하시고 한국과도 이렇게 무역하고 하는데 그 한국에 대한 아일랜드 국민들의 그 인식이 어떤지 굉장히 궁금해요.
I think Irish appreciation of Korea is growing and has grown very quickly in recent years. I was home in the summer and everybody I spoke to under the age of 30 was asking me all about, was very well informed about Korea and was asking all the right questions and excited to come and visit and so on. So there's a big generational shift there. And as I mentioned, the majority of Irish people are young anyway, so that's a good thing. Korean food is growing in popularity in Ireland. You see a lot of Korean barbecue restaurants. People telling me they're trying to make their own kimchi. You know, that is really popular. K content, yeah, to some extent. K movies for sure. K dramas. K-pop slightly less so, if I'm really honest. And I think that's because the competition is tough in Ireland. We have a very, very active music scene in Ireland. And so I think K-pop is struggling to fight through a little bit. But interestingly, what is really popular in Ireland are Korean cars. So the Hyundai Ioniq range have been the most popular cars in Ireland for years. And lots of people have quite strong brand loyalty to Samsung as well, actually. So it might be slightly less exciting, but I think it's really important. I mean, Hyundai is really massive in Ireland in particular.
야, 그 대사님이 갑자기 그 현대차 얘기하고
네,
그러니까
깜짝 놀랐어요.
그러니까 그 지금 뭐 간단하게 삼성이나 뭐 삼성의 가전제품이나 현대차의 자동차를 얘기를 해주셨는데 한국과 아일랜드가 주로 교역을 나누는 그런 품목들은 좀 어떤 게 있고 그 상품이 지금 교역 상품이 된 것도 왜 그런지 좀 맥락도 좀 궁금하긴 해요. 그리고 앞으로 한국과 좀 어떤 분야에서 협력을 강화하고 싶으신지 좀 여쭤보겠습니다.
So the Irish economy probably exports more services than goods. So of our roughly 450 billion euros exports each year, about 64% of that is in services. And those services span across lots of different things, like I said, aviation services, software solutions, components to bigger products and so on. And you see that replicated in our relationship with Korea. About 2.7 billion euros worth of exports comes into Korea each year, but a lot of that is what we would call invisible. It is tiny components of Samsung phones or LG products or Hyundai cars. It is sometimes specific solutions to larger Korean companies that rely on tech platforms, a lot of financial technology as well, and then a lot of kind of research type relationships, providing research services to Korean pharma companies and so on. So what that means is those relationships are very much business to business. It's difficult for me to walk into eMart or into the Hyundai department store and point to all the great Irish brands. It's harder. It's harder for the public to see it, and therefore it's harder for them to understand. But what is really good is that those business-to-business relationships are very sustainable. They are based on mutual comparative advantage. They're based on trust. They evolve with the business need. So they really are genuine partnerships, you could say, between Irish companies, many of them being small and medium companies, and larger Korean partners. The other element to our economic relationship, it's not really a trading good, but that's education services. So before the pandemic, we had about 2,500 to 3,000 Korean students come to Ireland each year to learn English, to do primary degrees, to do postgraduate study and so on. And we're trying to recover that. We're trying to bring that back now that travel is possible again. And then lastly, we have some brands. We do have some brands. There's a porridge oats brand called Flahaven's. And Flahaven's second largest export market in the world is Korea. And so it's really, really popular. We do, of course, have Guinness. We have Jameson whiskey. We have all the alcohol, Bailey's Irish cream. They're all extremely popular. And then, some stuff that people might not appreciate. So we have a large quantity of agricultural machinery, for example, comes into Korea from Ireland. So it each has its own history, but what gives me a lot of hope is that many of those relationships, like I said, are long-standing and very, very sustainable.
그러면 앞서 말씀하신 아일랜드랑 미국도 밀접하게 관계가 있으시다고 했는데 사실 그 애플이나 구글, 페이스북 같은 IT 기업의 그 투자 유치도 굉장히 많이 하시더라고요. 그래서 저 이렇게 외국인 투자 유치를 계속하는 이유랑 그리고 이 아일랜드의 미래 산업에 대해서 좀 궁금합니다.
It goes back to many years ago when we were struggling and we were a newly independent country with not much natural advantage. At the time in 1943, I believe, we established a dedicated agency to attract foreign investment to Ireland, the Industrial Development Authority. And those that are engaged in FDI largely consider IDA to be best in class at what they do, at attracting foreign investment. And in fact, recently IDA established a relationship with InvestSeoul so that they can help learn from each other about how to go about it. But really, all IDA does is work with what we have, the natural advantages that we have. How we have been successful have been investing in that critical mass, particularly the workforce skills, investing in research and development, research and innovation capabilities. Ireland consistently does well on ease of doing business indices. We have a favourable, low red tape, a favourable environment, English speaking, and so on, low corruption. I think our location helps. You can fly to London in an hour, you can fly to New York in 5 hours, and you can be almost anywhere on the continent of Europe within 1.5 hours. So that strategic location, I think, really helps. And we are the only English-speaking country in the EU now since the UK left. So we do have those natural advantages. So really, it's just about recognising them and investing in them and making sure they are still ahead of the game, that we remain competitive and building on relationships, really.
대사님, 저희가 한국이 2030년 그 엑스포 유치를 활동을 지금 하고 있어요. 근데 엑스포 유치의 엑스포의 주제가 전 지구적인 문제, 그 인류가 닥치고 있는 문제를 좀 함께 해결해 보자, 뭐 이런 컨셉을 좀 가지고 있는데, 그 아일랜드나 혹은 대사님이 생각하시는 우리 그 인류적인 문제, 인류가 함께 해결해야 될 문제는 어떤 게 있다고 생각하세요?
Well, there are a lot of crises to choose from, let's face it. I think we're seeing, since the war in Ukraine, we're seeing a polarization of the world, which frankly is making life a little difficult. It's making business and commerce difficult, but importantly, it's making our ability to collectively solve problems difficult. It's making it harder for us to come together around things like climate change and global hunger, and various other challenges we face. So what is great about the expo is that is an opportunity to pull down those barriers and for us to really come together and share our experience, share ideas, and so on. Korea has done really well at positioning yourself as a global pivotal state. And this global pivotal state status in a difficult time, combined with the bid for the expo in Busan, I think is the right combination. It's great. Mm-hmm. Sadly, Ireland does not have a vote in the expo competition, so we cannot offer our support. But we really do wish Busan all the best in the race, because we share so much in common with Korea, so many similar perspectives based on our shared history, and we can think of no better friends anyway to convene those conversations and to help us solve those problems.
Thank you.
감사합니다. Thank you so much.
그 마지막으로 한국 정부나 한국 국민들에게 하시고 싶은 말씀 부탁드릴게요.
No, just that, I hope our strong partnership can continue. We certainly in Ireland want to see more Korean people come and visit our country, and we are encouraging more Irish people to come to Korea too. And so much of our relationship is based on person-to-person relationships that I think now that the pandemic is behind us, that we can really take some of those relationships forward and build a stronger foundation for the future. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and it's been really interesting to talk to you.
사실 이게 아일랜드가 설명을 들어보니까 되게 국가가 평화롭고,
네.
그러면서도
안전하고,
화끈하고 안전하고 IT 기술이 발전해 있는데 소고기도 맛있어. 그러면은 사실 되게 한번 여행 가보고
네.
싶은 그런 지역인 것 같기도 합니다. 그래서 저희도 열심히 돈을 모아서 아일랜드 여행을 한번 추진해봤으면
한번 안
좋겠습니다.
보내주시나요?
아일랜드 출장 한번 기획해볼까요? 예, 지금까지 아일랜드에 대한 다양한 이야기를 나눠봤습니다. 그 주한 아일랜드 대사관의 미셸 윈트롭 대사님과 함께했습니다. 감사합니다.
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 복잡하고 어렵게 느껴지는 재무제표와 용어들. 친절한 투자 멘토 사경인 마스터가 매주 새로운 콘텐츠로 알기 쉽게 설명해드립니다. 재무제표 분석과 포트폴리오 구성,
뭐 양대 재무제표라고 그러면 대차대조표랑 손익계산서가 있거든요.
매수 매도 방법,
이때 사는 게 좋겠네. 이렇게 살면 좋겠다. 근데 이렇게 살려면 뭘 해야 되냐면요. 나머지 3분의 1은 놔둬봅니다. 어디까지 가는지.
실전 투자 팁까지 알려드립니다. 오직 3프로 멤버십에서만 만나실 수 있습니다.